welcome back to RoseTinted. So ever since I had a baby, as in the first baby a year ago, I have had loads of questions about what don't they tell you about labour and delivery, what don't they tell you about pregnancy, what don't people tell you, what don't this, that and the next thing. So I decided I would do 10 things that people don't tell you about postpartum. So bear with me because everybody is different. I am not a medical specialist in any way, shape or form. These are just 10 things that I wish people had told me about everything after giving birth, because everybody tells you things about the pregnancy, nobody tells you what to expect afterwards or what can happen afterwards. So without further ado, let's jump in. So the first thing that people don't tell you about postpartum is that afterbirth pains get more painful with each child that you have. So when you give birth to your first child, after pains are there, but they're not that bad, and honestly you don't notice them because of the chaos of your firstborn. However, second time around, afterbirth pains, especially while I was breastfeeding, were actually quite painful. They were reminiscent of the early stages of labour. And after doing that once already, it's not that great to experience it straight after. But these do go away after about, I'd say maybe 4 or 5 days. The afterbirth pains tend to go away, but nobody prepares you for them, nobody warns you, nobody talks about it, so yeah. Number 2 is that breast engorgement is one of the most uncomfortable parts of the entire process, or at least it was for me anyway. So basically, engorgement is when your milk comes in and they are over full, and they tend to be quite firm. They look full, you tend to get veins, they feel tight, they can be quite sore, and they can burn. So the first time this happened, so when I was pregnant, when I'd just given birth to Nicholas, engorgement was much more prominent that time around, but I wasn't exclusively breastfeeding with Nicholas, which is why I think that happened. Engorgement second time around was there, but it definitely wasn't anywhere near as bad. Firstly, because I think I knew what to expect, and secondly, because I was exclusively breastfeeding when my milk came in. So I feel like Edmund was probably emptying the milk before my breasts had a chance to engorge, but definitely one of the most uncomfortable, not painful, but most uncomfortable parts of the entire process. And I do recommend like a manual pump just to release some of the pressure from your breasts during engorgement. Number 3 is that postpartum sweating is a thing. So basically, after you give birth, your hormones are all over the joint and they will come out however they need to, and they will make you do weird things. My weird thing seems to be sweating, and apparently this is quite common while your hormones are all up in the air. I would like to point out that generally speaking, I'm quite a sweaty person anyway, so I have overactive sweat glands, especially in my underarms, not really anywhere else, but my underarms and my top lip. If you know, you know. So I sweat quite a lot anyway. However, when I talk about postpartum sweats, I mean waking up at 2 in the morning soaking wet and having to change your pajamas, having to shower extra, having to change your tops throughout the day. Like, postpartum sweating is like sweating, like you've just done a workout sweating, or that you've just gone for an 8-mile run in Dubai in the like height of summer. It's really, really quite uncomfortable and makes you quite self-conscious, or it makes me self-conscious anyway. But yeah, nobody told me that postpartum sweating was a thing. Number 4 is that although everybody kind of expects to bleed after you give birth, after all, you've just either pushed a baby out your birth canal or you've had a C-section and your body still needs to get rid of everything that was on the inside, so bleeding can still, or will still, occur for the most part. Nobody tells you that it can start and stop. So my bleeding stopped about a week in this time around, and then it restarted again about 2 days ago. Definitely not anywhere near to the extent that it does after you first give birth, but your bleeding, your postpartum bleeding, can definitely stop and start. So just be careful if you have any plans, if you know what I mean. Usually it can be mistaken for a period, and for some women it may be your first menstrual period after giving birth, but for the most part your bleeding just starts and stops based on what your body is trying to get rid of. Number 5, phantom baby kicks. So obviously you've just carried a baby in your body for 9 months and your body has gotten used to the pattern of your baby, especially your brain. It gets used to the pattern of your baby's kicks. Nobody warned me that even when baby was on the outside, I would feel kicks from a baby that aren't in there anymore. It's a weird thing to try and describe to somebody, but it's basically your body making these kicks, or the feeling of kicks, or your brain or something or other making you feel like you're experiencing kicking, purely based on the fact that your body is expecting them to be there. Nobody warned me about that, and after it happened when I had Nicholas, I freaked out. I seriously freaked out. Turns out it's perfectly normal, it's perfectly common, and it doesn't happen all that often. Like in terms of how often they happen to you, they'll maybe happen like once or twice, but phantom kicks in general are quite common. Yeah, second time around I knew what I was expecting. I've only had it about twice this time around, but it's definitely a weird feeling if you're not expecting it. Number 6, let's get gross for a second. So everybody talks about peeing after giving birth, especially if you've had a vaginal birth. Nobody talks about pooping, right? Now this is gross and not something I want to discuss on the internet for very long. So basically, why does nobody talk about how the front end, yes, you expect that to hurt, the back end hurts too, because everything down there has been working to push a child out of your lady bits. So everything is quite tender, and nobody warns you about the back end, so here's me warning you that pooping will more than likely be more painful than peeing. Number 7, and this is something that I think people don't tell you because it doesn't happen to everybody. However, when I was giving birth, I tore all of my stomach muscles, and I know that my sister did as well. I also tore muscles in my back, which have caused extra back pain, and if you've seen my labour and delivery story, you'll know how happy it will make me to be experiencing even more back pain. However, with all of the movement, the pushing, the contractions, all of these different things, your muscles are working overtime, and if they are not warmed up enough, they're not expecting it, or they're not used to this kind like level of work that they're having to do, there is a chance that they will get damaged or tear. Obviously, this can be like, this fixes itself most of the time. However, paracetamol will be your best friend. Well, actually Panadol will be. I don't believe in paracetamol. However, yeah, nobody told me about that, and I think it's because it doesn't happen to everybody. They don't know to mention it, but I am mentioning it to you. There is a possibility that other things apart from your lady bits will tear. Number 8 is postpartum anxiety. So although I don't believe women talk about postpartum depression enough, I feel like women talk about postpartum anxiety even less. So I experienced postpartum anxiety mainly with my firstborn son. So when I had Nicholas, I started getting postpartum anxiety, which basically meant I felt uncomfortable leaving the house. I felt uncomfortable being in the house. I felt uncomfortable not having Nicholas, but I felt uncomfortable caring for Nicholas. I also would wake up with horrific nightmares about things happening to Nicholas and all this kind of stuff. And although sometimes postpartum anxiety can be linked to postpartum depression, which in my case it was, and I don't think that's something I want to talk about at the moment, but it can be linked to postpartum depression, but it can also be a symptom all on its own, and sometimes you just need to get it out your system. Sometimes it will go away itself, and sometimes you will need medication just to tone back the anxiety. My advice would be to speak to your health visitor. Be open and honest with your health visitor, because they are there to help you as much as they are the baby. So that would be my advice for that one, but nobody told me that postpartum anxiety was different to the baby blues or postpartum depression, so keep an eye out for all sorts after you have a baby. Number 9. Although your boobs change because you're producing milk, they may also permanently change. And when I say permanently change, I don't mean get saggy, because I think a lot of us know that our boobs are going to drop, especially if you breastfeed. However, I have gone up a cup size and a half, I think, since I had Nicholas, and my boobs are no longer producing milk. So it's not milk that is creating the size anymore, and I have gone back down to 2 pounds more than my pre-baby weight. So it's not extra weight, unless I have 2 pounds of fat in my boobs all of a sudden, but it never happened that way before. Basically, your boobs can change permanently, so they can get bigger or smaller after your pregnancies permanently. So now none of my bras fit properly. So bra shopping it is, my favourite kind. However, nobody tells you that. Everybody tells you that your boobs will change because of milk and this, that and the next thing, but they can permanently change, ladies. Permanently. But yeah, not a super dramatic one, just I feel like it's something nobody tells you about. And lastly, number 10 is something I've only realised now, and that is that losing weight the second time around is a lot harder and takes a lot more time. So when I gave birth to Nicholas, I was back in my size 4 jeans a week after I gave birth. It took about 2 months for me to tone up my stomach and stuff like that, and then I was basically back to normal. In fact, I would even say I was healthier in terms of, or fitter in terms of the way my body looked after I had Nicholas than before. However, second time around, I fit back into my size 4 jeans, so that's not a problem. Everything else though, like my arms, my legs, my chin, my face is still a bit round, my hands and feet are still a little bit bigger. Like all of these different things are taking a lot longer to go away than they did last time, and I feel like people just don't talk about it because obviously you don't want to put any pressure on women to lose weight after they've had a baby, and you don't want them to feel like they have to shrink back down, or you don't want women to expect that their bodies will just, because realistically it doesn't happen. And like I said in my October favourites video when I spoke about my jeans, I fit into the jeans but take the jeans off and it don't look that pretty. So yeah, I feel like nobody talks about the fact that with each child you have, it gets slightly harder to lose the weight. And obviously you'll be older each time you have a child, so that works against you as well. But not majorly important. Just for me, I wish somebody had told me because I wasn't prepared for like hard work this soon. So that is it for my 10 things that nobody tells you about postpartum. Let me know if there's anything that you experienced postpartum that nobody told you about in the comments below. I'd love to hear them because I'm super interested as to what people have experienced that nobody has warned them about. If you enjoyed this video, then don't forget to subscribe down below and also click the bell notification button so that you are notified every time I upload a new video. And until next time guys, bye!